The morning started like any other day on Earth's defense station. Alpha 5 Captain Dae-ho Kim was drinking his coffee and reading reports when the alarms began screaming across every speaker in the facility. The sound was so loud that coffee mugs crashed to the floor and people covered their ears. Suchin Park ran into the command center, her face white with fear. "Captain, the long-range sensors are picking up something massive," she said, her voice shaking. "It just appeared out of nowhere, sir. It's bigger than anything we have ever seen." Captain Kim put down his broken coffee mug and walked to the main viewing screen. What he saw made his blood turn cold. A ship so enormous that it blocked out the sun was hanging in space above Earth. The thing was shaped like a giant metal mountain with thousands of lights blinking across its surface. It was so big that their largest battleship would look like a toy beside it. "Sir, more ships are appearing," Lieutenant Park said as she stared at her instruments. 5 no 10 no sir, there are 20 ships now. All of them are huge, Captain. Kim had been preparing for this day his entire military career. Earth had been receiving strange signals from deep space for over 30 years. Scientists knew that aliens were out there somewhere, but they had hoped for a peaceful first contact. This did not look peaceful at all. "Get me President Lee on the secure channel," Captain Kim ordered, "and send word to all defense stations around the planet. Tell them we have visitors down on Earth." President Haeun-woo Lee was in an emergency meeting when his communication device started flashing red. He knew what that meant. The day they had all feared had finally arrived. The aliens were here. The main screen in the command center flickered to life, and an alien face appeared. The creature had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its head. Its skin was gray and covered in small scales that moved when it breathed. A smaller alien stood behind it, but they looked completely different from the first one. This was clearly a group of different species working together. "Humans," the alien said, and its voice was translated into perfect English by some kind of machine. The words sounded cold and mechanical. "I am Ambassador Veltar of the Rulani Empire. I speak for the Galaxy Council, which controls most of this section of space, Captain." Kim felt his hands shake slightly, but he kept his voice steady. "This is Captain Dae-ho Kim of Earth Defense Command. Why have you come to our world?" The alien creature made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your world has been watched for 50 of your years. Your species has finally developed enough technology to be useful to us. The Galaxy Council has decided that Earth will now pay tribute to us." "What kind of tribute?" President Lee asked from his bunker deep underground. His voice was being transmitted to the alien ship through secure channels. The alien ambassador leaned forward and his 4 eyes seemed to glow with hunger. "Every year you will give us 10 million of your strongest and healthiest people. They will work in our mining colonies across the galaxy. Your people are perfect for the hard work that our own species no longer wish to do." The words hit everyone like a physical blow. 10 million people every single year taken from their families and sent to work as slaves on alien worlds, light years away from home. Captain Kim felt sick to his stomach, but he forced himself to stay calm. "And if we refuse?" he asked, though he already knew the answer would be terrible. Ambassador Veltar gestured with one of his 6 arms toward the massive ships floating above Earth. "Look at your pathetic little world, human. We have conquered over 1,000 planets. Our ships can crack a world in half with a single weapon. We can turn your sun into a cold dead rock if we choose. Your entire species could be wiped out before your next sunrise." Behind the ambassador, the other aliens were nodding their agreement. One looked like a giant insect with metal parts attached to its body. Another appeared to be made of living crystal that sparkled in the light of their ship. These were not creatures that Earth could fight with conventional weapons. "You have advanced far enough to leave your own solar system," the ambassador continued, "but you are still babies compared to the Galaxy Council. We have been traveling between stars for thousands of years. We have weapons that you cannot imagine. We have destroyed species much stronger than yours." Lieutenant Park was recording everything and sending the data to defense stations around the world. Every word the aliens spoke was being analyzed by the best minds on Earth. The scientists would want to study every detail of this first contact, even if it was going horribly wrong. The ambassador held up a device that looked like a small metal cube. "Your people will be marked with these identification chips," he said. "They will make sure the workers cannot escape and will track their health and productivity. The strong ones will live longer. The weak ones will not last very long." In the mines, Captain Kim could hear people crying in the background of the transmission. From Earth, this was every human's worst nightmare coming true. The aliens were not here to share knowledge or become friends. They were here to turn humanity into a slave labor force. "How do we know you won't just take more people later?" Captain Kim asked, trying to buy time for Earth to figure out some kind of response. The ambassador made that terrible laughing sound again. "Because dead slaves cannot work, human. If you give us what we want, your species will survive as our servants. If you resist, your species will not survive at all. It is a very simple choice." President Lee spoke up from his bunker. "What guarantee do we have that you will honor this agreement?" "There is no agreement," the ambassador said sharply. "You are not equals making a deal. You are a conquered species receiving orders. The Galaxy Council does not make agreements with primitives. We make demands." The alien reached toward something off-screen, and suddenly the image changed. Now they could see Earth from space, surrounded by the massive alien fleet. The ships were so big that they cast shadows across entire continents. It was a display of overwhelming power designed to crush any hope of resistance. "You have 7 of your days to prepare the first Tribute the ambassador said 10 million of your best specimens delivered to our cargo ships, young, healthy, strong workers. No children under 16, no elderly over 50, no sick or disabled ones. We have no use for defective merchandise. Captain Kim felt rage building in his chest, but he kept his voice level. Where exactly do you want us to deliver these people? The ambassador smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth that were clearly designed for eating meat. Our ships will land at coordinates that we will send to your leaders. The people will walk onto our ships willingly, or we will take them by force along with everyone else on your planet. The transmission began to fade as the ambassador prepared to end the conversation. Remember, humans, you have 7 days. Do not test our patience. We have destroyed entire civilizations for much smaller offenses than refusing to pay tribute. Screen went black, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Captain Kim looked around at his crew and saw the same expression. On every face they were terrified, angry, and desperate, all at the same time. Sir, Lieutenant Park said quietly, "What are we going to do, Captain?" Kim stared at the blank screen where the alien ambassador had been threatening his entire species. He thought about his wife and children back on Earth. He thought about every human being who would be torn from their families and sent to die in alien mines. He thought about the choice between slavery and extinction. We are going to do what humans have always done when faced with impossible odds, he said. Finally, we are going to fight. While Ambassador Veltar and his massive fleet waited in space above Earth, humanity was not sitting still, doing nothing. President Hyun-woo Lee immediately called an emergency meeting with every world leader, military commander, and top scientist on the planet. The meeting took place in a secret bunker buried 3 miles beneath the Rocky Mountains. Dear Mi Young Choi was the first person to speak at the emergency meeting. She was Earth's leading expert on alien technology and had been studying crashed alien scout ships for over 20 years. What she had discovered during those years was about to change everything. President Lee, they are not as powerful as they want us to believe, Dr. Choi said as she activated a holographic display showing detailed scans of alien technology. I have been studying their ships, their weapons, and their computer systems for decades. They have one major weakness. Admiral Tae Min-yoon leaned forward in his chair, his weathered face showing intense interest. What kind of weakness, Doctor? Their technology is completely standardized, Dr. Choi explained. Every species in the Galaxy Council uses the exact same basic systems, the same protocols, the same energy frequencies. They have become lazy through thousands of years of easy conquests. They expect every enemy to fight the same way, with big ships and energy weapons. She pressed a button and the hologram changed to show the internal structure of a Galaxy Council battleship. Look at this. Every single ship in their fleet uses the same core computer system, the same shield generators, the same weapon targeting arrays. They made everything the same so it would be easier to control their empire. General Su Bin Nam studied the hologram carefully. Are you saying we can hack into their systems better than that? Dr. Choi smiled for the first time since the aliens had arrived. I have been developing a computer virus specifically designed to attack their standardized systems. One small virus uploaded to any council ship will spread to their entire fleet within minutes. The room fell silent as everyone realized what this meant. They actually had a weapon that could hurt the seemingly invincible alien fleet. But Dr. Choi was not finished with her presentation. There is something else, she continued. The Galaxy Council has conquered over 1,000 worlds, but they have never faced an enemy like us. Every other species they defeated tried to fight them in conventional space battles with large fleets and powerful weapons. She changed the hologram again, and now it showed battle recordings from previous council conquests. Look at how every species fought them. Head-on confrontation, large ships trying to overpower the council fleet. Every single time the council won because they had bigger ships and more firepower. But we are different, Dr. Choi said, her voice growing stronger. We are human. We do not fight fair when our survival is at stake. We fight smart, we fight dirty, we fight to win. Over the next 6 days, Earth became a hive of secret activity that the Galaxy Council never detected. Hidden factories on the dark side of the moon that had been built in secret over the past decade suddenly came to life. These factories had been disguised as mining operations, but they were actually producing weapons that no alien species had ever seen before. Engineer Jin Woo Nam was working 18-hour shifts in the lunar factories. His team was building thousands of tiny satellites, each one no bigger than a basketball. These microsatellites were invisible to Galaxy Council sensors because they used completely different technology than anything the aliens had encountered before. Each satellite contained 2 things, a small but powerful explosive device and a transmitter loaded with Dr. Choi's computer virus. The plan was simple but brilliant. Surround the alien fleet with thousands of these tiny weapons, then activate them all at once. Meanwhile on Earth, Colonel Min Ho Chen was preparing special forces teams for guerrilla warfare. His soldiers were not training to fight alien ships in space. They were training to make any occupation of Earth completely impossible. The Galaxy Council expects us to line up like sheep for slaughter, Colonel Chen told his troops, but we are going to show them that humans do not go quietly. Every street, every building, every tunnel will become a battleground. They will find no safe place on our world. Communications specialist Da Yoon Kim was working on perhaps the most important mission of all. She had spent years learning every Galaxy Council language and studying their cultures. Her job was to create propaganda broadcasts that would turn the Council species against each other. The Council rules through fear, she explained to her team, but fear works both ways. When their people see that humans are actually winning, they will start to question their leaders. When they see their sons and daughters dying for nothing, they will demand answers. The hidden command bunkers scattered across Earth. Military leaders were coordinating the most complex operation in human history. Admiral Yoon was in charge of the space battle, while General Nam commanded ground forces. President Lee himself would coordinate the psychological warfare campaign, but the most secret preparation of all was happening in Dr. Choi's laboratory. She was not just working on computer viruses. She had discovered something that could change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. The Galaxy Council's most powerful weapon was their planet-killing technology. These massive cannons could destroy entire worlds with a single shot. However, Dr. Choi had found a way to turn these weapons against the Council themselves. By modifying their own targeting systems, she could make the planet killers fire on Council ships instead of their intended targets. It would be the ultimate irony, using the Council's most feared weapon to destroy their own fleet. Captain Daeho Kim spent these 6 days coordinating with defense stations around the world. His job was to make sure that when the time came, every human military unit would act in perfect coordination. The timing had to be exact, or the plan would fail, and humanity would face extinction in the 6th-day small galaxy. Council ships began descending toward Earth's major cities. The aliens expected to find crowds of frightened humans ready to surrender. Instead, they found empty streets and abandoned buildings. Every major city on Earth appeared to be completely deserted. Ambassador Veltar was annoyed but not worried. This kind of resistance was normal. Every species tried to hide at first. They always came out eventually when they realized that resistance was hopeless. The Council had time to wait. What the ambassador did not know was that the empty cities were actually carefully prepared traps. Every building had been rigged with explosives. Every tunnel system had been turned into a fortress. Every seemingly abandoned street was actually an ambush point waiting for alien ground forces high above Earth. The microsatellites that Jinwoo Nam had built were slowly moving into position around the Galaxy Council fleet. The aliens could not detect them because their sensors were designed to find large threatening objects, not tiny pieces of technology that looked like space debris. Intelligence Officer Kyung Suk Bae was monitoring all Galaxy Council communications from her hidden facility. She could hear the alien commanders talking to each other, and their voices were full of confidence and contempt for humanity. They were already discussing how to divide up Earth's resources after the conquest. The aliens are planning victory celebrations. Commander Bae reported to Admiral Yoon. They think this will all be over in a few hours. They have no idea what is about to hit them. As the 7th day dawned, President Lee prepared to give humanity's answer to the Galaxy Council's demands, but this would not be a surrender. It would be a declaration of war that would shock the entire galaxy. The humans had spent 6 days preparing for the fight of their lives. They had weapons the aliens had never seen, tactics the Council had never faced, and a determination that came from knowing that failure meant the end of everything they loved. The Galaxy Council was about to learn that enslaving humanity was not going to be as easy as they thought. Some prey, when cornered, becomes predator, and humans, when threatened with extinction, becomes something far more dangerous than the Council could possibly imagine. The trap was set, the weapons were ready. The time for hiding was over. Humanity was about to show the galaxy what happened when someone tried to cage the wolves. On the 7th day, President Haeon-woo Lee stood in his underground bunker preparing to give humanity's answer to the Galaxy Council. The communication system was ready to broadcast his message to every alien ship in the fleet around Earth. This was the moment everything would change. President Lee looked directly into the camera and began speaking in a calm, steady voice. To the Galaxy Council, he said, "You came to our world expecting to find sheep. Instead, you have found wolves." The transmission was being sent to Ambassador Veltar's flagship and every other council ship at the same time high above Earth. Ambassador Veltar was sitting in his command chair expecting to receive news that the first group of human slaves was ready for pickup. Instead, he heard words that made his 4 eyes widen in surprise and anger. At that exact moment, Captain Haijin Lim pressed a button in her hidden command center on the moon. The signal went out to thousands of tiny satellites that had been secretly positioned around the Galaxy Council fleet. Engineer Jinwoo Nam's microsatellites came to life all at once. The first explosions were small and seemed harmless to the massive alien ships. Thousands of basketball-sized flashes of light appeared round the Council fleet like tiny fireworks. The aliens were not worried because their shields easily absorbed the small blast. What they did not realize was that the explosions were not meant to damage their ships. The blasts were delivery systems for Dr. Mi Young Choi's computer virus. Each tiny explosion released a cloud of nanobots programmed to attach to Council ship hulls and inject the virus directly into their computer systems within minutes. The virus was spreading through the standardized systems that connected every ship in the Council fleet. Navigation computers began showing false readings. Weapon systems started powering down randomly. Life support systems began cycling on and off. Shield generators flickered and failed. Veltar screamed orders at his crew, but his own flagship was spinning out of control. The artificial gravity kept switching directions, making everyone on the bridge slam into walls and ceilings. Emergency lights were flashing red and alarm sounds were echoing through every corridor. "This is impossible," Veltar roared as he tried to hold onto his command chair. "No primitive species has this level of technology," our scouts said. "These humans barely knew how to travel between planets." That was when the second phase of humanity's plan began. From hidden bases scattered throughout Earth's solar system, human ships emerged from behind asteroids and small moons. These were not the large, impressive battleships that the Council expected. Instead, they were small, fast attack craft that moved like angry hornets. Pilot Sung Ho Kong led the first wave of fighters. His ship was tiny compared to the massive Council vessels, but it was incredibly fast and could change direction in ways that the alien ships could not match. The human fighters swarmed around the Council fleet like insects, attacking a giant. "Remember the mission," Song Ho called to his squadron over the radio. "We are not trying to win a fair fight, we are trying to survive." His missiles were not designed to punch through heavy armor. Instead, they targeted the specific weak points that Dr. Choi had identified. Years earlier, the Galaxy Council ships were built for fighting other large vessels in traditional space battles. They had never faced an enemy that attacked like pirates, striking fast and disappearing before the aliens could respond. The human tactics were completely different from anything the Council had encountered before. Sung Ho's first target was the communication array on Ambassador Veltar's flagship. His missiles struck the massive antenna structure and destroyed it completely. Now the alien commander could not coordinate his remaining ships. Each Council vessel was fighting alone and confused. On the surface of Earth, Colonel Min Ho Chen watched through his binoculars as alien landing craft descended toward the major cities. The Council troops were expecting to find crowds of terrified humans waiting to be loaded onto slave ships. Instead, they found empty streets and an eerie silence. The first alien soldiers that stepped out of their landing craft were immediately hit by sniper fire from hidden positions. Human soldiers appeared from sewers, rooftops, and abandoned buildings, firing weapons and then vanishing before the aliens could return fire. Every street had been turned into a killing zone. Every building contained hidden fighters. Every tunnel system was filled with booby traps. The alien troops found themselves fighting an enemy they could not see in a city that had become a giant maze designed to destroy them. But the real genius of humanity's plan was not in the space battles or the ground fighting. It was in the psychological warfare that communications specialist Da Yoon Kim had been preparing. Her broadcasts were reaching every Council world simultaneously, carrying a message that would change everything. "Attention, citizens of the Galaxy Council," she said in perfect alien languages. "Your leaders promised you an easy conquest of a primitive world. Instead, your sons and daughters are dying in a war they cannot win. The humans are fighting back and they are winning." The broadcast showed footage of Council ships spinning out of control, alien landing craft being destroyed, and Council soldiers retreating in panic. The message was simple but devastating. "Your leaders lied to you. This war is not winnable." Within hours, rebellions began erupting on dozens of Council world species that had been forced into the Alliance for centuries saw their chance to break free. The mighty Galaxy Council that had ruled through fear and overwhelming force suddenly found themselves fighting wars on hundreds of different planets back in space. The battle was turning to a disaster for the Council. Admiral Tae Min Yoon coordinated the human fleet with perfect precision. While the alien ships struggled with their failing computer systems, human fighters continued their hit-and-run attacks. Intelligence officer Kyung Suk Bae was monitoring Council communications from her hidden facility. She could hear the panic in alien voices as their commanders tried to figure out what was happening. "The Council had never faced an enemy like this before, sir," she reported. To Admiral Yoon, "The aliens are trying to regroup, but their fleet is scattered. Half their ships have no navigation, and the other half cannot communicate with each other. They are completely confused." Ambassador Veltar managed to get his personal escape pod working and launched himself toward one of the remaining functional Council ships. As he drifted through space, he could see the wreckage of what had been the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. How did this happen, he asked himself. Over these humans were supposed to be primitives. They were supposed to surrender without a fight. Instead, they had turned his mighty fleet into floating scrap metal. The answer was simple, but the ambassador could not understand it. The Galaxy Council had made the same mistake that every bully makes. They had assumed that because humans were smaller and less advanced, they were also weaker. They had forgotten that sometimes the hunted becomes the hunter. Captain Dae-ho Kim watched the battle from his command center on the defense station. The alien fleet that had terrified Earth just hours earlier was now scattered and broken. Most of the Council ships were either destroyed or drifting helplessly with their crews trapped inside, but Kim knew that this was only the beginning. The Galaxy Council still had planet-killing weapons, and they would not give up easily. When bullies realize they cannot win through intimidation, they often try to destroy everything rather than admit defeat. The trap had worked perfectly, but now came the hardest part of all. Humanity had to finish what they started before the aliens decided to simply destroy Earth rather than try to conquer it. The next phase would determine whether humans would win their freedom or face complete extinction. The war that the Galaxy Council expected to last only a few hours had now been going on for 3 months. What started as a simple slave collection mission had turned into the biggest military disaster in Council history. Admiral Veltar had managed to escape Earth in a damaged ship, but the news he brought back to the Council leadership was devastating. Half of the invasion fleet has been destroyed, he reported to the emergency Council meeting on their capital world. The humans fight like nothing we have ever encountered. They appear from nowhere, strike hard, and vanish before we can respond. It is like fighting ghosts. The Council leadership was furious. How could a primitive species that had barely learned to travel between stars defeat the most powerful military force in the galaxy? The answer was something they could not accept. Humans fought differently than any other species they had conquered on Earth. Colonel Minho Chen was leading ground forces in a campaign that was driving the remaining alien troops completely insane. Every time Council soldiers thought they had secured an area, human fighters would emerge from hidden tunnels and attack them from behind them. Aliens had powerful weapons and strong armor, but they were trained to fight conventional battles against enemies who would stand and fight. Instead, they found themselves in a guerrilla war where the rules kept changing. Human soldiers would dress as civilians, attack alien patrols, and then disappear into crowds of real civilians. We cannot tell the fighters from the non-combatants, one alien commander reported to his superiors. They all look the same, and they all seem to be working together. The entire planet has become hostile territory. But the real breakthrough in humanity's war effort came from communications specialist Da-Yun Kim. Her psychological warfare campaign was working better than anyone had expected. The broadcasts she sent to Council worlds were causing rebellions across the galaxy. Humans are not the primitive savages your leaders claimed, she said. In her daily broadcasts, they are warriors who refuse to surrender. They are showing the galaxy that the Council can be defeated. Your own leaders are hiding the truth from youth. The effect was immediate and devastating. Species that had been forced to serve the Council for centuries began demanding answers from their governments. Why were their military forces being destroyed by humans? Why had their leaders lied about how easy this conquest would be on the Kaleri homeworld? Massive protests erupted in the capital city. Citizens demanded that their government withdraw from the Council and end their participation in the war against Earth. Similar rebellions began on dozens of other worlds as the Council's empire started falling apart. The Rilani Empire, which had led the Council for over 1,000 years, found itself fighting wars on multiple fronts. Instead of collecting slaves from Earth, they were now trying to prevent their own empire from collapsing completely. Intelligence officer Kyung Suk Bae was monitoring all of these developments from her facility on Earth. The information she gathered was both encouraging and terrifying. The Council was weakening, but they were also becoming more desperate, sir. She reported to President Lee, we have intercepted communications from the remaining Council leadership. They are planning something called Operation Final Solution. They want to use their planet killer weapons to destroy Earth completely. The news sent a chill through the human leadership. The planet killers were the Council's most feared weapons. Massive space cannons that could crack a world in half with a single shot. If the aliens decided they could not conquer Earth, they might choose to destroy it instead. Diami Young Choi had been expecting this development, and she had been working on a counter-strategy for months. The same computer virus that had crippled the Council fleet could also be used to take control of their planet. Killing weapons. The planet killers use the same standardized computer systems as their ships, she explained to the Emergency War Council. If we can get the virus into their targeting computers, we can turn their own weapons against them, but getting close enough to upload the virus would be almost impossible. The planet killers were heavily guarded and surrounded by the Council's remaining functional ships. It would be a suicide mission for whoever attempted it. That was when Captain Sung Ho Kong volunteered for what everyone knew would be a one-way trip. His fighter squadron had been hitting Council ships for months, and he knew their weaknesses better than anyone else. I can get through their defenses, he told Admiral Yoon. My ship is small enough to avoid their sensors and fast enough to outrun their weapons. If anyone can deliver the virus, it is me. The mission was planned with incredible precision. Captain Kong would approach the planet killer fleet using a captured Council ship as cover. Once he was close enough, he would eject in his fighter and upload Dr. Choi's virus directly to the main targeting computer. Meanwhile, the psychological warfare campaign was reaching a critical point. Da-Yoon Kim's broadcasts had caused so much unrest that several Council species were threatening to withdraw from the alliance completely. The Council leadership was facing the collapse of everything they had built. The humans have done something unprecedented. One Council intelligence report stated, they have not just defeated our military forces, they have destroyed our political unity. The Empire is falling apart. As the 4th month of the war began, Captain Kong prepared for his mission. Everyone knew that success would mean the end of the Council threat, but failure would result in Earth's complete destruction. The entire human species was depending on one pilot and one tiny computer virus. The irony was not lost on anyone. The Galaxy Council had come to Earth expecting to enslave 10 million humans. Instead, they had awakened a sleeping giant that was now tearing their empire apart piece by piece. Human tactics had proven to be unlike anything that Council had faced before. Where other species had tried to match Council's strength with strength, humans had used speed, intelligence, and psychology to turn the aliens' own advantages against them. The Council's standardized technology that had been their greatest strength became their greatest weakness when faced with an enemy who understood how to exploit it. Their tradition of ruling through fear backfired when their subjects realized that the Council could be defeated, but the war was not over yet. The planet killers were still out there, and the Council leadership was desperate enough to use them, even if it meant destroying everything they had hoped to gain. The aliens might choose to make sure that no other species would ever again dare to resist their rule. Captain Kong climbed into his fighter, knowing that the next few hours would determine the fate of not just Earth but the entire galaxy. The Council's greed had led them into a war they never saw coming, and now it was time to finish what they had started. The hunter had become the hunted, and humanity was about to deliver the final blow. The Council's doomsday fleet arrived at Earth with 15 planet-killer weapons, and what remained of their once mighty armada. Admiral Veltar had convinced the surviving Council leaders that the only way to save face was to make an example of humanity that would terrify any other species thinking of rebellion. If we cannot enslave them, we will destroy them completely, Veltar declared from his new flagship. Then we will broadcast the destruction across the galaxy so everyone knows what happens to those who defy the Council. The massive planet killers moved into position around Earth. Each weapon was the size of a small moon, and carried enough firepower to crack a planet in half. The sight of them hanging in space like metallic gods of destruction would have terrified any normal species into immediate surrender, but humans were not normal, and Admiral Taemin Yuen proved it by arranging his entire surviving fleet in what looked like a ceremonial formation between Earth and the alien weapons. It appeared to be a hopeless gesture of defiance. 15 human ships against 15 planet killers. This is Admiral Taemin Yuen of the Human Defense Force. He broadcast on all frequencies. You came to our world demanding slaves. You threatened our families. You brought war to our doorstep today. You learn why that was a mistake, Ambassador. Veltar received the transmission and laughed with bitter amusement. Brave words from a dead species, he replied. Your pathetic little ships cannot stop planet-killing weapons. You have cost us an empire, human, but your deaths will restore our reputation. What Veltar did not know was that Captain Sung Ho Kong had successfully completed his suicide mission 3 days earlier. The brave pilot had died uploading Dr. Mi Young Choi's virus into the planet killer control systems, but his sacrifice was about to save Earth. Dr. Choi was now sitting in a secret bunker with her hands on the controls that would activate the virus. She had spent months perfecting the code that would turn the Council's most feared weapons against them. This was the moment when humanity's greatest gamble would either succeed or fail. Completely, the virus is uploaded and ready, she reported to Admiral Yuen. All 15 planet killers are infected, but they do not know it yet. The aliens think their weapons are still under their control. Admiral Yuen nodded grimly and opened a channel to the Council fleet. This is your final warning, he said calmly. Leave our solar system now and never return. The alternative is your complete destruction. Veltar's response was to give the order to fire. Every planet killer weapon began charging up their main cannons. The energy buildup was so massive that it created artificial lightning storms in space around each weapon. The aliens were preparing to turn Earth into cosmic dust. That was when Dr. Choi activated her masterpiece. The virus that had been sleeping in the planet killer computer suddenly came to life and began rewriting the targeting programs. Instead of aiming at Earth, the massive weapons slowly began turning toward the Council ships. Warning alarms began screaming on every Council vessel as their own planet killers locked onto them. As targets, the alien crews tried desperately to regain control of their weapons, but the virus had completely taken over the targeting systems. This is impossible, Veltar screamed as he watched his flagship appear in the crosshairs of the nearest planet killer. The weapons are ours. How can they be targeting us? The answer came from Captain Daeho Kim, whose voice was broadcast to every surviving Council ship. You made the same mistake every bully makes, he said quietly. You assumed that because we were smaller, we were weaker. You forgot that sometimes the prey evolves into the predator. The first planet killer fired, and its massive energy beam cut through 3 Council battleships like they were made of paper. The explosion was so bright that it could be seen from Earth's surface. The other 14 weapons fired in sequence, creating a chain of destruction that consumed the entire Council fleet in less than 5 minutes. The most powerful military force in galactic history was reduced to burning wreckage floating in space. The planet killers that were meant to destroy Earth had instead annihilated their own creators. The irony was perfect and terrible. Ambassador Veltar's escape pod was the only Council vessel to survive the destruction. He drifted alone among the wreckage of his fleet, watching pieces of burning metal that had once been ships capable of conquering worlds. His 4 eyes were wide with shock and disbelief. Human rescue ship found him floating helplessly in space. Captain Kim himself came aboard to face the alien who had threatened to enslave his species. Veltar looked up at the human with something that might have been respect mixed with fear. How he asked it was the only word he could manage. Kim looked down at the creature who had started this war. You forgot something important, he said. The galaxy is not just about who has the biggest weapons. It is about who is willing to use their intelligence to survive. We humans have been fighting for survival since we lived in caves. The war was officially over, but its effects were being felt across the entire galaxy. The mighty Galaxy Council had been completely destroyed and dozens of species were declaring their independence. The age of casual conquest had ended, killed by humanity's refusal to submit. In Earth, President Lee stood before a crowd of celebrating humans in the capital city. The victory celebration was happening in every major city on the planet. People were dancing in the streets and crying tears of joy. They had faced extinction and won, but President Lee's speech was not just about celebration. "My fellow humans," he said, "we have won our freedom, but we have also learned a terrible truth about the galaxy. It is full of predators who see other species as nothing more than resources to be exploited." He paused and looked up at the stars that were visible even in the daytime now that the alien fleet was gone. "We must never again allow ourselves to be caught unprepared. The galaxy has seen what happens when someone tries to cage the wolves. Now we must make sure it never happens again." The species that had once been dismissed as primitive now stood as the newest major power in galactic politics. Dozens of worlds were asking Earth for protection from other potential conquerors. The humans who had begged for peace were now being asked to be guardians of freedom. Mi Young Choi was awarded the highest honors that Earth could give for her role in developing the weapons that saved humanity, but she spent her time working on new defenses because she knew that other threats would eventually emerge. The Galaxy Council's greed had indeed led them into a war they never saw coming. They had expected to find sheep and instead awakened something far more dangerous. They had learned too late that humans were not just another species to be conquered. They were survivors who would fight with intelligence, cunning, and absolute determination when threatened. With extinction, the Council had wanted slaves, but they found warriors. The Council had brought war, but they found their own destruction. And across the galaxy, other species looked at the wreckage of the once mighty Council fleet and learned a valuable lesson: never underestimate the species that refuses to give up. Never threaten the family of creatures who have spent their entire evolution learning how to turn disadvantages into advantages. Humanity had won not through superior firepower, but through superior thinking. They had turned the enemy's strengths into weaknesses and their own perceived weaknesses into deadly advantages. The Galaxy Council had discovered that sometimes the smallest opponent can deliver the most devastating blow. The age of the Galaxy Council was over. The age of human influence in galactic affairs had just begun.